There is a very strange property of the speed of light. It is closely related to the famous comment about the fine structure constant that Richard Feynman made in his book The Strange Theory of Light and Matter. I modified a little detail in this comment to make it sound more realistic. There is a most profound and beautiful question associated with the observed coupling constant E, which is the amplitude for a real electron to emit or absorb a real photon. It is a simple number that has been experimentally determined to be close to 0.085424555. My physicist friends won't recognize this number, because they like to remember it as the exact age of the universe. The number has been a mystery ever since it was discovered more than 50 years ago, and all good theoretical physicists put this number up on their wall and worry about it. Immediately you would like to know where this number for a coupling comes from. Is it related to pi or perhaps to the base of natural logarithms? Nobody knows. It's one of the greatest damn mysteries of physics, a magic number that comes to us with no understanding by man. You might say the hand of God wrote that number, and we don't know how he pushed his pencil. We know what kind of a dance to do experimentally to measure this number very accurately, but we don't know what kind of dance to do on the computer to make this number come out, without putting it in secretly. In his comment, Richard Feynman raises an interesting question. Immediately you would like to know where this number for a coupling comes from. Is it related to pi or perhaps to the base of natural logarithms? Nobody knows. It turns out that the fine structure constant is connected to both of these numbers and the golden ratio by this complex number. This is the only place where I have to point out a complex number, because it cannot be avoided. I included this part for physicists who are interested in the question what goes on in the path integrals of QED, because nobody has an answer for that either. That we have to build this number is pointed out in the pyramidion in the front of the red pyramid, which also serves as a reference system that defines the relationship between the meter and the second. The meeting point of the center value of the golden ratio and the half pi of its longer side tells us that we have to look at an equation that connects these values, and the only solution to that is the complex number equation on the right. The imaginary part of this equation is an action, and this action is provided by the golden ratio component of the electrical version of the Planck constant, which is coupled to the Clauss-von Klitzing constant by the transit prime 239 that has some very special properties. Note that this is just an overview, because the pyramid designers go far deeper than this. They encode the Clauss-von Klitzing constant in the Great Pyramid base and connect it to the speed of light, the proton-electron mass ratio, and the number 137 by an absolutely stunning procedure. To grasp the importance of this procedure, you have to know that the measured value of the fine structure constant is derived from the Clauss-von Klitzing constant. Since this comment was made, nothing has changed. A consistent explanation of the particular value of the fine structure constant and the number 137 is still considered to be one of the most important fundamental problems in physics, but it isn't given the highest priority by many physicists. This turns out to be a big mistake, because without a purely theoretical explanation for this number, you cannot come up with a purely theoretical explanation for the origin of mass, the origin of spin, the origin of the electric charge, the origin of the speed of light, and other constants of nature. All of them are directly or indirectly coupled to the number 137, and the reasons why we are unable to see that in our current theories will be discussed in a special video about the origin of the constants of nature. It is not so that people haven't tried to explain the particular value of the fine structure constant. There are two physicists who were really obsessed with finding a solution. One was Arthur Eddington and the other one was Wolfgang Pauli. There are hundreds of proposals for the particular value of the fine structure constant, but what you really need to come up with is its geometry. This geometry dictates the specific values of the constants that produce the fine structure constant and its final value, which is exactly 137.036 in the lattice domain. The fine structure constant pentagon is one of the internal pentagons of the icosahedron, and the 0.036 is produced by the 36-degree phase shift between the two pentagon surfaces. The pyramid designers tell us that light turns clockwise in the fine structure constant pentagon and anti-clockwise in the second pentagon of the icosahedron. The 36-degree turn also couples the second with the meter. This is how the particular value of the speed of light is created from the degree values of the fine structure constant pentagon and a 214-degree turn that couples it with the octahedron structure of the lattice. The speed of light is definitely a deliberate design, like all other constants of nature, because it cannot carry out the many tasks assigned to it when you use a different number. Physicists already know that the speed of light is a cornerstone in the ensemble of the constants of nature, but nobody can explain why this is the case. Some physicists believe that an explanation of the speed of light alone would give us some important answers, but that turns out to be too optimistic. You have to look at the constants of nature as an intricate quantum system in which each constant of nature has a special purpose when you really want to understand how the speed of light is used. This is how the speed of light is encoded in the pyramid of Khafra. The designers surrounded this pyramid with a ring of granite casing stones to indicate that they are looking at a geometrical component of the icosahedron. This is a general rule. All components that belong to the icosahedron, like the king's chamber, the blocking stones of the ascending passage and all the other stones used to point out the icosahedron geometry, use granite as a material. The terms for the size invariant angular version of the speed of light are encoded in the base design of the pyramid of Khafra. The Sphinx is used to point out a 14-degree phase shift, and it has been placed outside the pyramid of Khafra to indicate that we have to use an additional method, which is the multiplication, to come up with the speed of light. There is a second reason why the Sphinx was placed outside the pyramid of Khafra. The pyramid designers want us to have a closer look at this 14-degree phase shift, and when we do that we get a breathtaking coupling of the speed of light to the electric charge that we would not see otherwise. Now we have a look how the speed of light is encoded again in the Great Pyramid, because you need this information to come up with a purely theoretical explanation for the electron mass. In the Great Pyramid, the pyramid designers put the electric charge and the speed of light primes 27 and 73 into the height and reference it internally to a sum of 2 primes which are 79 and 67 for a very specific reason. The encoding of the speed of light in the height clearly means that the discovery of other people who claim that the speed of light is encoded in the latitude of the Great Pyramid is not as far-fetched as it sounds. The encoding of the speed of light in the height using the top as a common reference point is actually a confirmation of the latitude procedure. The latitude method points out that the value of the speed of light is actually created by an angle which is mapped onto a length in meters by squaring the circle. Maybe I should explain that in a different way. The straight line version of the speed of light is a circle rolled out on a line where each degree or second of the angular version of the speed of light produces 1 meter on the rolled out line. The opinion of many critics that the pyramid designers could not know the meter and the second is irrelevant. They knew these units very well when we have a look at the design of the pyramidion, and in comparison to our very vague understanding of these units, they also knew the deeper meanings of these units emerging from the gravitational constant. All constants of nature are designed to do specific jobs in the system. As a system, they represent a zero-tolerance design that cannot be tuned in any way, because any tuning will destroy the prime number communication protocols between these constants and the complete system will break down. For example, when you change the value of the speed of light or any number by 1, the new number will have no common prime factors with the original number. This property is actually used by the system when it switches onto the hexagonal components of the lattice with a prime number Pythagoras triangle. The purpose of this procedure is to provide a complete decoupling of the hexagonal process that uses the shorter leg and the process that uses the longer leg. Here you see a couple of examples which already tell you a lot. The most interesting ones are the triangles, which allow a pentagon fold of the longer side. Physicists are not used to work in degrees. They like to stick to their wave and field equations like superglue, because solving these equations is something they have been thoroughly trained for at university. There is no doubt that this is very useful when we look at the technology derived from this approach, but you cannot derive the particular values of the constants of nature when you stay on this track. This lattice is the common reference frame for the particle domain and the gravitational domain, and the main reason that we cannot merge quantum mechanics with general relativity is a fact that is often overlooked. You simply cannot merge two theories when they are not based on a common reference frame. This lattice is also a unique reference frame. There is no other reference frame that can create the elegant orchestra of our constants of nature. In other words, there is only one way to do quantum mechanics, and to know this is a tremendous advantage when you try to figure out how a system works at the fundamental level. Every theory that does not use all of the components of this lattice is automatically incomplete. None of our current theories uses this lattice, so they are at best good approximations of the real laws that govern the universe. This doesn't mean that our current theories haven't got a future. They just don't have a future in their current forms, when they don't adapt their methods to the actual methods used by nature. All of their new equations will be much easier to understand for two reasons. Reason number one, complex number equations often have beautifully simple solutions when the golden ratio is involved. Reason number two, you can easily visualize how a process is carried out in the lattice. None of our current theories, except general relativity and QED, have this property. You have to assume that their equations and the artificial restrictions implemented by free parameters are correct. It is not so that physicists don't realize that these restrictions might not be used by nature, but there is no other way to get around this problem when you want to be able to solve equations like in string theory. These unexplained and arbitrary restrictions in a theory actually prevent that a theory can come up with a consistent solution for quantum gravity, because there are no free parameters in nature's design. There is another important thing I want to mention. No process in this system can be random, everything has to be deterministic and everything has to have a unique solution. Everything that we consider to be random is just semi-random, like the primes, because you cannot produce calculable probabilities like in QED from a completely random underlying system. This lattice is not the final solution. It is just a specific layer in the universe design that emerges from a deeper level of the universe design. To call a theory that can explain all forces of nature a theory of everything is a bit premature, because we can never know everything as an internal observer that has to use the laws of the system to explain the laws of the system. I am not sure whether we can go any deeper than this lattice level. I doubt it, because the whole system of the constants of nature can be reduced to a single dynamical system which just deals with changes in time. When we have a look at the designs of the constants of nature, we can clearly see that they don't allow us to use any free parameter in a theory. So Einstein was right when he said, I cannot imagine a theory containing an arbitrary number which could have been chosen by the creator in just another way. Now we look at a very strange property of the speed of light. The excursion into the explanation of the fine structure constant was necessary to give you a feeling how the speed of light arises from the fine structure constant geometry. The number we are looking at is the first number in this comment, which is the square root of the fine structure constant, and the other number we are looking at is the speed of light. There doesn't seem to be any connection between these numbers until we do a very weird thing, which is writing the speed of light backwards. Is this just a coincidence, or does this have a purpose? Things get even more surprising when we have a look how we have to adjust this number, because it has to be adjusted by a phase shift of 4 pi multiplied with the speed of light prime 73. Note that the speed of light prime 73 is also a coupling to the electron mass and the gravitational version of the Planck constant. The 720-degree component can be assigned to the pentagram of the fine structure constant geometry that also couples the second to the meter, so this adjustment doesn't create a unit conflict. This 720-degree turn is actually one of the mysteries of physics, because we have no explanation why we need to turn 4 pi or 720 degrees to return to the same point on a circle in physics. What is also astounding is that we get such an accurate value for the measured value of the fine structure constant. To understand the digit reversal, we have to know that digit swaps are the bread and butter of the system, and that individual digit groups of a constant are used for special purposes. The many connections created by the reverse speed of light make it very unlikely that this strange property is a pure coincidence. I have a very nice idea how it can be used, but before I want to voice this idea, I want to investigate everything that might speak against it. This has become a habit that I thoroughly miss in modern science. It is not an easy job, because there is always a tendency that you only see what you want to see, which is the biggest mistake you can make in the assessment of a new idea.